Um, hey, everybody, this is Sean Kitzman from Sustainable Coaching Practices. This is for the Massage Entrepreneurs Group. Robert and I, not Robert Norbacek, or no, I don't want to check, right?
Yeah, nobody wants to check.
Yep, nobody wants to check. And I are talking with Nayelli. Nayelli, say your last name for me, please.
Cardenas.
Cardenas. Yep. Okay, cool. So we're speaking with Nayelli. Robert and I haven't figured out how to get multiple people on Facebook Live yet. I don't even know if it's really a thing. So we're doing this on Zoom. So Nayelli has a great question. It's actually a question that Robert and I have talked about a lot privately in chat, just as to what we really feel like the value is from both of our own individual experiences. So Nayelli, do us a favor and ask us the question again.
All right. So as my practice is expanding, I'm looking to what steps did you guys take or have seen that have been really conducive to a positive employee culture within the environment. So how do you keep your employees happy? How do you get them to buy into your vision, your mission, have that sense of ownership, have that feeling of this is home for me, this is my professional home, and how do I get to stay here and develop together as a family, as a community? What steps have you guys done to create that employee culture that makes it really a long-living relationship?
Yeah, I'll let Robert speak to this first because he's managed this, and then I'll speak to it afterwards, having worked in an environment that went from a really good culture to really toxic. Perfect. So go ahead, Robert, hit it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the best questions to ask both of us because I'm not a massage therapist. I've said it over and over and over again. I was a business professional in this industry, and I did end up running a team. I think we were up to about 20 people when we were running full steam. I forgot the exact number. And it's going to be a great question because Sean can touch on, from his standpoint, what he saw. One of the most important things, I think, to building a sustainable practice, and give you a little bit of background, while I was running our day spa, I prided ourselves in how little turnover we had. There was a moment when we were expanding, we actually had more employees than more people than I fired or have parted ways with. And I think a lot of that has to go back to just understanding where your employees are in their journey and being flexible. And understanding that your journey has to match their journey. So when they're growing and you're growing, you give them a vision of where you want to be, what they can expect from you. You can help them understand what can they learn from you, what can they grow with you. Every employee is going to be different. There is no two employees that are identical. And creating management practices where you're trying to manage every person identically is always going to backfire. In our spa, we had somebody that I like to call Spa Mom. She enjoyed shopping. She enjoyed baking cookies. Giving her the freedom for that was one of the reasons she enjoyed staying here. Phenomenal massage therapist, but that's what she enjoyed. And by giving her what she enjoyed, a little bit of flexibility. Another therapist really prided herself in her experience, and her title was, she wanted to be able to brag about her title, and she earned it. So giving her that title and having her give her the authority to showcase herself, it gives her the opportunity to feel welcomed and respected. When you're growing a practice, it's very important to understand where everybody is in their career. One of my biggest struggles when I started was I came from a sales background. So I was a sales manager training 5 people. And in sales, when you're in sales, everybody is money hungry. There's the only objective on a salesperson mind is money. And when I came into the day spa industry, I didn't realize that there's other needs of therapists. And so all I thought was, hey, I'll just dangle a carrot because everybody's about the money. And it turns out that this industry is full of amazing therapists that have different desires, different drives. And when you can understand where people want to be, that's when you can effectively manage people.
Yeah, I think I think those are all really important things, is understanding the motivations of the people that you have. I think the thing that most people forget about and they don't actually want to do, because our industry is full of people who are really compassionate and empathetic, but I think culture is ultimately job number one. And then, you know what, one person can kill culture. So the minute you figure out that this person doesn't fit, you need to get rid of them. And I'll tell you a story about that so for the first 3 years, from 2000 to 2003, I worked for a private practice. The woman who I worked for, who really mentored me for 3 years. I say I apprenticed underneath her because I did. I didn't do anything other than go to the office. Like, that was it. And so when I first started working with her, she co-owned a massage therapy practice. And then about 9 months into that, she decided she was going to open up a holistic wellness center. And she sold her half of the business, or her shares of the business, to her partner at the time, and then opened up the holistic wellness center. And the goal for us was the goal that every holistic wellness center has, provide amazing care, blah, 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 blah. And she brought in this woman. She brought in a couple women, actually, that were very codependent, that were very insecure, were very passive aggressive and manipulative. And it was very hard to feel really supported in that culture because, you had these people that were really, they were really in the business for themselves, and they weren't in it for the group. And so they would undermine things. I got accused of stealing this lady's Bible. If I'm going to steal anything, why in the hell am I stealing a Bible? And so, so it was really kind of this very, very, tough situation. And then when those two ladies left, we had this really good time period again. And then she brought in her son, who didn't have any experience in the industry. And again, this created this very toxic relationship. So we would have these ups and downs in not only the way that our culture felt, but also you could see the reflection in the clientele as well. Like, you could track numbers almost like magic, So I think that really paying attention to culture, and I see this with my wife. So my wife is a nurse practitioner, nurse midwife, and she manages a group here, or she leads a group here, but she doesn't actually have any ability to hire and fire. And so she has a person on her team right now that is so ridiculously unprofessional, but she can't get rid of them because she's in a system and they have to go through these steps of HR, right? And so it really, really, when this woman's in her cycle, man, oh man, in her cycle of craziness, man, does it really weigh on the rest of the practice. So, I think culture is a really big thing, in understanding that, one person can kill your culture.
Well, and so touching on the culture thing too, it's important to understand that culture can change at any moment. You can hire a great therapist, and I had this happen in my own spa. I had somebody come to our spa, and when they started out, they were a great therapist. But there came a moment where, and I'm not going to get into specifics, so I'm just going to go vague. The vision of the company shifted, or something shifted in our side, and now this therapist is no longer a right fit. And because they're no longer a right fit, their culture has now become negative. They've become about sabotaging. They want to do what's best for them, and because they have different visions. And so it's important to understand when those moments happen, that it's okay to move on from a therapist. Sometimes you might be even doing them a favor.
Right.
There's therapists that they succeed in certain environments, and if your practice grows past what their environment is in, then you're actually doing them a disservice, forcing them to be in there, because they're going to be unhappy. It's going to create negative culture. It's going to create negativity. People are going to become more angry, and your whole business takes a hit. Meanwhile, the person that you're trying to rescue actually isn't benefiting from it. So it's important to realize, as you're, and it really depends on how fast you're growing, where things are going. It's really important to understand the vision, what your next steps are, and see, does your team fit into it? And it's really hard. It's really hard when you make that decision that, okay, it's time to move on, because you do grow attached. Most of the therapists that I had working under me, I ran the business for 3.5 years. And I think my average person was 1 year and 7 months. People came on board and they stayed with us for the most part. So when you do have to part ways, it stinks, but then you looking back, it's like, you know what? It was the right decision. I hated it. It really sucked, but at that time it was the best thing.
Yeah. And I think too, you have to recognize that, in our industry, we have a lot of people that, and I mean, you've done this for 19 years, so this is nothing new to you, right? I mean, like you've been around the block enough, but I think I think sometimes too, we forget about, one of the reasons that I stayed with Carol for as long as I did is because there was in the beginning and up until like the last, I don't know, 9 months or so that I was with her, there was a really big growth period, and I've been on my own for 16 years working, right? So I made what Vaynerchuk would call a number one potentially, right? Like I can operate on my own.
Right.
But if you put me in the right place where I have the right support, I would be a great number two as well. I'd lay down in traffic for you if it was a good enough situation. And so we have to remember too, like you want, people that are buying in, because they're never going to buy in 100% because they don't, it's not their vision 100%. But you want people to buy in like, 70 to 90% or 60 to 90%. And you just realize that's how it is. You don't want people that buy in 20% because they're not going to actually put it in the work, but that's what you're looking for. You'll never get someone that buys in 100%. Because for me, when I was working with Carol, the goal was that she was going to help me build my skill sets up enough. And then we were working on the system of the office of the system. And I was going to open up another location. And so she was going to give me the opportunity to be a number one in another location, right? So, but I think the other thing too is the support, because I don't think that enough people in our industry really understand that massage school teaches you the basics of massage, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cater. Exactly.
Yeah, and so you have to take CUs outside of that. And so if you're in the right environment, for me, if I had a practice where I had multiple people, then my goal would be to, what's your thing and how do I support that?
Exactly. Exactly. I feel like building the therapist up outside of their certification that they got from school is probably part of what the investment that needs to come from me. I find I've hired a couple new therapists and they've left. So I'm wondering, okay, what is it? Why have they left? And I think because I wasn't really investing anything in them.
Right.
So now I'm doing more training, more hands-on training on client intake, customer interactions.
Yeah.
And I feel like, with this new therapist that I've hired, I can see their self-esteem growing as a therapist, their confidence, and they've actually mentioned, thank you. I learned how to massage. I got the certificate, but now I'm learning how to be a massage therapist. So it sounds like what I'm hearing from you as well with your mentor is that investment that they put into you. And I think that that's also something that we need to do more of in our industry as clinic owners, or even the spa ownership, that investment into, well, let me check how you're draping, let me just check, see how you're doing with that, because everything needs to be on par. Our clients deserve that. Our clients deserve consistency,
and figuring out who wants to be a leader and teaching them how to be a leader, right? Because at 24, when I was that's been always something that I've done, right? So at 24, damn, I was rough around the edges, right? Like, I wanted to help people and I wanted to lead, and I naturally took those, I just naturally take those positions. Like it just happens, so, one of the other things that was borderline helpful for me was that, Carol was interested in, at some point in time, and kind of helping me grow into that thing. The other thing too that I see a lot of, and Robert can speak to this too, because again, being a practice owner, is those really tight boundaries, right? Like this is a professional relationship, but it's no different than a personal relationship. You shouldn't let people do shit in your practice that you wouldn't let them do to you, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's such a critical thing. He and I talked to another practice owner who has multiple therapists. And that was one of the things that we really worked on talking to this person about, because those boundaries, you know, when you have kids, boundaries keep kids safe, right? I mean, like, that's what they're looking for. And as adults, we want boundaries as well. We just don't realize how much we want it, because within those boundaries, if they're healthy boundaries, then there's safety. I can come in, I can be myself, I can operate here to my best capability. But if there's no boundaries set, then we're in here and it's, you know, willy-nilly. You know, it's the wild, wild west.
No. And I think as leaders of the crew, if you will, you know, you set the tone, and you do teach people how to treat you, how to treat themselves. You know, I wish I would have definitely had a mentor, or even understood that I needed a mentor. You know, a little bit younger, I was, you know, out there flying solo for such a long time. And the minute that I humbled myself or understood that I needed a mentor, my career exploded, you know, from being a massage therapist to a business owner.
Right.
And going back to your comment, Nayeli, when you mentioned you had a couple therapists leave on you, and now that you're investing time, I think the old saying when it comes to hiring is hire slow, fire fast. You want to make sure that you choose the right people. So in your practice, if you don't need therapists coming in really, really quickly, you can be a lot more selective. In our business, I was growing so fast that I didn't have time to be picky. So I would bring on people, and the people that worked, they got what they wanted, and the people that didn't work, I just parted ways with. And there's no hard feelings there. But if you're in a position where you can take things slower, then your interviewing process should be much longer, so you can weed out the people that want to grow within your business. So going back to what Sean said, so Sean was a rough around the edges leader at 24. If you find those people and that's your perfect person, you might spend 50 interviews finding that perfect person. As long as your business isn't getting hurt, it's okay to do those 50 interviews. If your business is taking a hit with revenue and you can't, you need, then you just understand that it's a temporary Band-Aid. You don't tell that as a business owner, but it is what it is. And when you find that person that is willing to be a leader, that is willing to want to go to the extra mile to take the CEUs and learn within the system and things like that, that's when you double down on your investment. And so it's very important to understand who you're interviewing, because that interview process tells you everything. What they're going to be, when they show up, how they act, what questions they ask you, their follow-up. I can't even tell you, like, I would intentionally not follow up with therapists to see if they would call me, because that told me if they're serious about the job or they're not serious. I would give them 2 days. So I would literally leave them the door open, and I would say, I'll make a decision in 2 days. They didn't call me in 2 days, and I still needed a therapist. I understood that I'm just using a filler. But if somebody followed up with me, well, I'm doubling down on this person, because they're the type of person that's hungry, and that person is exactly the type of candidate I want. So it's really important to spend more time up front investing into the culture, investing into hiring the right people. You can do it one of two ways. I mean, in our practice, we were growing so fast that we literally hired by osmosis. So you want to show up, do massages, great. You didn't work out, okay, bye. The people that did work out, I always went the extra mile for them, but it's always understanding that interview process of what they want and where you can take them down their path.
Well, I think I'm implementing a 30-day try it out period for both of us. So it's very clear. It's very clear that we're just testing it out, and in those 30 days, I'm doing training. And if there's this hunger for the training, then, like you're saying, I'm doubling down. If there's no hunger, there's no desire, there's I'll show up. I'm definitely having that sense of, you're here for now, and and I will see you when I see you.
Yeah, and I think too that recognizing that in the beginning, especially for you, because you come from such a great wealth of information, with being in practice for 19 years, I mean, you have so much you can teach them at depth. But along the way, like there's going to be this period there's this romance period, right? Just like any relationship. And then there's going to get to be this relationship where, hey, look, I need to try and, spread my wings and grow a little bit. And then what does that mean? What is that? How do you foster that? And then also recognizing that, the other thing that I really kind of shake my head at and kind of I'm really surprised by is when you see people like, oh, well, I had this therapist leave, and then now there's this bitter thing. Well, look, I mean, the idea that when we all get out of school is that we're going to open up this business and we're going to kill it, right? So in the back of your head, I mean, a lot of the people, whether they want to or not, actually, they have this idea that they're going to try it out. And so, you give freely, like you give without expectation. And you give without grudges. Now, obviously, if somebody does something really awful, that's a different story. But if you get to the point, like where Robert was saying, like you're year 3 or 4 or 5, and the person, you can kind of feel it too. You can kind of feel the split. Then, the best thing is just to recognize that, you spent 3 or 4 years with us. This has been great for us both. How do we as the practice owner, as the person that's brought them along, like how do we let them go without any real hard feelings? I mean, like, how is that process going to happen if everything's on the up and up? Because the other thing that you want to do too is like you've been in practice for 19 years, so you have this great ability to mentor and be a thought leader in your community. Man, a couple relationships like that can possibly kill the reputation of someone working for your practice as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think what I'm coming in with is an expectation that these therapists would at some day want to leave and start their own practice. That would be phenomenal.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, but you see so many people that don't do that,
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they don't. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Massage Entrepreneurs Group, and you see somebody that's leaving, and then all of a sudden the pitchforks and knives come out, right? I mean, like.
I love. So my goal with the therapists that I hire as well, it is to mentor them to be at some point small business owners, so that they, there's more of us. We need more of us. So yeah, there's a desire for the training and the mentorship and the building up of leadership so that we can have more.
So in your specific case, if you want people that are much more leader type oriented entrepreneurs in the interview process, you want to find people. You want to find people who are hungry and energetic and they have driven goals.
Right.
You ask them what's their 5-year plan, and then when you figure that out, personally, I had no problem with the therapist going out on their own. When I had a problem is when they thought they were smarter than me and they were trying to steal clients behind my back. And I'm sitting there like, really? Like, come on. I live, eat, and dream this business. You don't think I know that you're stealing clients from me? Of course, I never told them the exact words. But going back to Sean, so what Sean suggested was like, what can you do? And maybe part of the path in that situation is when you're coming near that point, you tell them, hey, let's do a 60-day transitional period. You're at the point where you can't grow further within here. If we keep going at this, we're going to hate each other. So let's work on a 60-day transitional period. I'm going to help you get to where you want to be as a small business owner. You'll give me time to transition in a new therapist. You'll provide them some guidance and everything will work out. Key is, though, understanding when that moment comes. And that's the hardest part. The other thing I want to really touch on is, Sean was talking about as we grow in boundaries, and in a culture, it just came to my mind is you want to make sure that those boundaries are always continuous. So when therapists usually go rogue, they never go rogue right away. There are a few that go rogue right away, but it's a stacking effect. They get a little way with a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And now all of a sudden this therapist that's used to show up half hour early, showing up 5 minutes before an appointment, hungover and drunk. And you're like, you want to get at it with them, but it's because you haven't controlled the boundaries earlier. So it's a very important thing. It's a love-hate. You got to be a little bit of a controller, and you got to give them a little bit of playway, but you want to make sure that you always control that professional boundary.
Right. And I think that's why it's very clear to have the systems already set up, and something that you can go back to and say, well, we spoke about this and now there's a discrepancy.
So cool, to kind of wrap it up a little bit here. So what have you taken away from our chat today?
So I really like the 60-day exit that was just mentioned right now. The feeling of this is a relationship, a professional relationship that's also there because of the nature of our industry. We are very compassionate, we're very empathetic, we feel each other out. The minute you walk into a room with massage therapists, you can tell. Everyone's, very touchy-feely, and so having that boundary very clear, I think will be the safest and the healthiest thing for the relationships in the long run. I think also part of it, just being in the industry, is I don't take things personally anymore. If someone wants to leave, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with their goals, their desires. And part of it for me as an employer is knowing those goals, knowing where they want to be at as an employee. I like the concept of, I like how knowing when the therapist is going broke. Not being afraid of, difficult conversations of bring it back, and for us to stay in this joyous relationship, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great question. When I saw it come across in our group chat, I was really excited to answer this question because there's a lot of subtleties and nuance, and we could talk about this for, a long time, because as you grow, these things will also change for you as well. Because, it's different when you have someone for 3 months than when you have someone for 6 years or 7 years or 8 years or 10 years.
So I think that another thing that I'm taking away from this conversation is looking back to where I'm at now, to 6 months, 9 months to a year, and how my hiring process will have changed.
Yeah, because it has to be fluid and dynamic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, just like the therapists who are there for a year, you have to reevaluate those. At the same time, you have to reevaluate your own business. Yes. Your business is different a year later, so the therapist you hired is your business has changed completely as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, cool. All right. Well, so what I'll do is I'll compress this. I'll put it on YouTube, and then I'll post it to the group. The Massage Entrepreneurs group, and then I'll send you the YouTube as well. My hope for this as well is that you can kind of use this for some hiring as well. Hey, look, here's the conversations that I had with 2 industry professionals about growing my practice. And these are the things that I'm thinking about, because we can hear how interested and passionate you are about gaining and retaining employees and building your culture in your practice.
Exactly. Awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll hit stop, and we'll chat for a couple minutes after that.
Awesome.